Have you ever had a moment so peaceful, so perfect, only to watch it shatter in an instant? Hey family, I hope you and your loved ones are staying safe and grounded today, because what you're about to hear is not just a story, it's a real reminder that peace is fragile and justice can be interrupted at any time. This is the story of Naomi Carter, a brilliant, fearless attorney, a woman who knew the law inside and out, who spent her life defending the defenseless. But one quiet afternoon in the park changed everything and turned her into the voice of a movement. The golden sun was pouring through the leaves, casting long shadows on the soft grass of Maplewood Park. Children ran laughing between trees, chasing bubbles, flying kites, playing tag. A few older couples shared quiet conversations over sandwiches. Joggers passed by, earbuds in, focused and smiling. It was the kind of day that made you believe the world could still be beautiful. Naomi sat alone on a weathered wooden bench near the pond. Her curly hair fluttered in the breeze as she flipped through the pages of a thick hardcover book. Her posture was relaxed, her expression soft and peaceful. For once, she wasn't standing before a judge, cross-examining witnesses or drafting legal briefs until midnight. She was just breathing, just a black woman enjoying a public park on a perfect afternoon. But peace for women like Naomi often comes with a time limit. The silence broke like a pane of glass. A police cruiser pulled up to the curb with an urgent screech. Its lights weren't blaring, but they didn't have to be. The sudden presence cut through the park like a knife. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Two officers stepped out. One tall and broad-shouldered, Officer Mitchell. The other shorter, eyes scanning everything, Officer Reyes. Their expressions were unreadable, their movements precise. Mitchell's gaze swept over the playground and picnic tables, skipping over the couples, the parents, the joggers, until it landed on Naomi, a lone black woman, reading, sitting. He muttered something to Reyes, then they started walking toward her. Naomi looked up slowly as they approached, her fingers still resting on the open pages of her book. "Ma'am," Mitchell said sharply, "we need to talk to you for a moment." She blinked. "Is something wrong?" Reyes stepped closer, his tone clipped. "We got a report of suspicious activity in the area." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Suspicious? Mind telling us what you're doing here?" Mitchell asked. Naomi held up the book in her hand. "I'm reading," she said. "In a public park." The officers didn't move. Mitchell's hand hovered near his belt, not grabbing but not resting either. "Let me see some ID," Reyes demanded. Naomi inhaled. Her heartbeat had quickened, but she didn't let it show. "Why?" "It's routine." Routine. That word always seemed to mean something different depending on who you were. Naomi reached slowly into her bag, pulled out her wallet, and handed over her ID. "Naomi Carter," Reyes read aloud, pausing as if the name itself were suspicious. "What's your business here, Miss Carter?" "I live here," she replied calmly. "I came to the park to read. Is that a crime now?" Mitchell smirked. "We'll see." Instead of returning her ID and walking away, they lingered. The questions grew more pointed, more invasive. "Do you always carry a book like that around?" Mitchell sneered. "Are you waiting for someone?" Reyes added. "Or just hanging out alone?" Naomi's patience thinned. She was used to difficult conversations. But this wasn't that. This was power flexing. This was the system pressing its weight down without cause. She took a breath and said firmly, "Unless you're charging me with something, I'm not answering any more questions." Mitchell stepped closer. "Don't get smart with us." "I'm a civil rights attorney," Naomi replied. "I know my rights. And I'm not breaking any laws by sitting in a public park." And just like that, everything changed. Reyes grabbed her arm. "You're resisting." he barked, loud enough for everyone around to hear. "What are you doing?" Naomi shouted. "Stop resisting," Mitchell yelled again, his voice rising as if to drown out hers. The click of handcuffs cut through the growing crowd like a siren. Naomi's wrists were pulled behind her back, cold metal biting into her skin. She turned her head, locking eyes with the young woman holding up her phone, filming. Naomi didn't say a word, but her eyes did. "Don't let them erase this," a man's voice called out. "What did she do?" But no answer came. As they walked her toward the cruiser, her breath caught in her chest, not from fear, but from disbelief. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the truth the entire community had just witnessed, and it was far from over. Inside the police cruiser, the world outside blurred into a smear of colors: faces, voices, trees, sky. Naomi Carter sat still, wrists bound, her breath shallow. The cuffs pinched her skin, but it wasn't the physical discomfort that hurt most. It was the betrayal. She stared at her reflection in the window, her eyes steady, but her chest tight. Just moments ago, she was reading a book under the sun. Now, she was being treated like a criminal. For what? Sitting while black. The cruiser pulled up behind the precinct. Naomi was led inside without a word. The officer's grip on her arm was tight, unnecessary. She didn't resist. She didn't have to. They had already decided what they wanted her to be. The holding cell was small, gray, and cold. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow across the concrete. Naomi sat down slowly on the metal bench, her hands now free, but her spirit aching. She stared at the red marks on her wrists. Faint bruises were already forming. She flexed her fingers, willing the sting to turn into strength. Then silence. No phone call, no explanation, no paperwork, just silence. Naomi leaned back against the wall, trying to slow her racing thoughts. Her mind replayed the moment again, the officers, their tone, the mock suspicion, the escalating force. She hadn't imagined it. The video captured it all, and somewhere out there, people were watching. Maybe it was the young woman with the phone. Maybe it was a mother who saw her child watching, eyes wide with confusion and fear. Maybe it was the man who shouted she didn't do anything before the door slammed shut. She wasn't invisible this time. The world had seen. Naomi closed her eyes, her breathing slow and measured. She thought about her clients, the ones she'd defended against unlawful arrests and abuse. She remembered the teenage boy wrongfully accused of theft because of his hoodie, the mother whose home was raided on a mistaken warrant, the grandfather humiliated by a stop and frisk in front of his church. She had stood for all of them. Now it was her turn, and she would not be silent. That night, hours later, Naomi sat at her kitchen table. She had been released with no charge, no apology, no explanation, just cold silence and bruised wrists. Legal pads, case files, and a steaming cup of tea covered the table in front of her. The light overhead flickered, casting long shadows across the notes she was scribbling. She picked up her phone and called the one person she trusted to fight this battle by her side. "Angela," she said when the line picked up. Angela Brooks, her closest colleague and a civil rights powerhouse, didn't hesitate. "I'm with you, whatever you need." Naomi nodded. "I'm filing a civil rights lawsuit." Angela didn't blink. "Then let's get to work." The days that followed were a whirlwind. Naomi combed through legal precedents, wrote depositions, and compiled evidence. The video from the park circulated online, going viral within hours. People were angry, but more importantly, they were inspired. Messages poured into her inbox, emails, texts, handwritten letters. "Thank you for standing up. This happened to my daughter last year. No one believed her. I've been afraid to go to the park for years. You made me feel seen." And then one from a retired woman in Detroit. I've waited my whole life to see someone like you fight back. Don't stop. You're carrying all of us with you." Naomi stared at those words for a long time. Then she stood up, walked to her mirror, and whispered, "This is bigger than me. Let's make it count." 3 weeks after that humiliating day in the park, Naomi Carter stood on the courthouse steps, not as a defendant, not as a victim, but as a plaintiff. The civil rights lawsuit was official. In her hands was a stack of legal documents bound tightly with a red ribbon, a quiet but bold symbol of defiance. Her heart thudded in her chest, not from fear but from resolve. She wasn't just suing for herself. She was suing for every Black woman who had ever been told, with words or without, that they didn't belong. News cameras lined the sidewalk. Reporters shouted questions. Supporters gathered with signs reading while Black is not a crime. Justice for Naomi. Power doesn't make you right. Rights make you powerful. Beside her stood Angela Brooks, fierce and focused. Together, they had built a legal case so watertight, not even the city's most ruthless defense attorneys could poke a hole in it. And across the street, the two officers, now identified as Officer Derek Carter and Officer Blake Daniels, walked up the courthouse steps, flanked by union lawyers, avoiding the press like shadows dodging sunlight. But this time, Naomi had light on her side. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. The gallery was packed. Journalists filled every seat. Community activists sat shoulder to shoulder with elders and students. Everyone knew this wasn't just another case. This was a reckoning. Naomi sat at the plaintiff's table, dressed in a sharp navy suit. Her eyes were calm, but behind them, fire flickered. The prosecutor, a seasoned woman named Carolyn West, rose first. "Your Honor," she began, "this case is not complicated. It's about a woman sitting alone in a park reading a book. That's it. And it's about two officers who, fueled by bias and unchecked power, turned that peaceful moment into a nightmare." She gestured toward the projection screen. The viral video played again. It filled the courtroom with sound, the officers' barking voices, the soft rustle of Naomi's book, the crowd's gasps, the chilling clink of handcuffs. And silence. That silence, after the video ended, said more than words ever could. Naomi's heart pounded, her palms itched. She could feel the gaze of every person in that room on her. But she didn't shrink. She sat up straighter. Then came the defense. Predictably, they blamed protocol. They claimed reasonable suspicion. They even argued that Naomi's refusal to cooperate created the escalation. Angela Brooks stood. "Refusal to cooperate?" she echoed, fire behind her voice. She handed over her ID. She answered every question. She showed patience, grace, and restraint, more than most could manage while being interrogated in public for existing while Black. She paused. "Let's call this what it is, an abuse of power, and it is not only unlawful, it is unacceptable." Over the next 2 days, witness after witness took the stand. There was the jogger who had seen it all unfold. She didn't do anything. They just walked up like she was already guilty. There was the mother with her child. "My daughter asked me, 'Why are they yelling at the lady with the book?' What was I supposed to say?" And there was the young woman who filmed the video, her hands trembling as she testified. I almost didn't record, but something in me said, if I don't, no one will believe her. Finally, Naomi herself took the stand. The courtroom went still. She adjusted the microphone, looked at the jury, then down at her notes. Then she folded the paper and spoke from her heart. "I've spent my career fighting for people who never thought they'd see justice," she began, her voice calm but steady. "That day in the park, I wasn't fighting. I was breathing, resting, existing, and somehow That made me a threat." She paused. "I was humiliated, handcuffed, silenced, not because I broke the law, but because two officers decided I didn't belong. And I can't let that go unanswered, because if I do, what happens to the next little black girl who picks up a book in public?" Her voice cracked. "Will they cuff her too?" Silence. Not even a cough in the room. When the closing arguments ended, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. The verdict? Guilty. Violation of civil rights. Excessive force, unlawful detainment. The courtroom erupted, reporters jumped to their feet. Naomi's supporters burst into applause. The officers sat stunned, Daniels with his head in his hands, Carter staring blankly forward. But Naomi? She sat still, letting it wash over her like rain after a long, dry drought. Outside, Naomi stood once again on the courthouse steps, flanked by Angela and Carolyn. Cameras rolled, microphones pointed, but she didn't read from a statement. She just looked out at the crowd and said, "I didn't win this case. We did. This was never just about me. This was about the right to exist peacefully, to be seen, to be heard. And I hope, truly hope, that this is the beginning of something bigger." Hey, family. Before we dive into this next chapter, I just want to take a second to check in. How are you and your loved ones doing today? I hope you're safe, at peace, and finding moments to breathe in this chaotic world. Now, let's continue Naomi's journey, because justice in the courtroom is one thing. But change, that takes more than a verdict. The sun had barely risen when Naomi Carter's phone started buzzing, not with congratulatory calls, but with headlines. City to launch, full review of police conduct after civil rights verdict. Mayor announces community oversight board. Internal affairs to reopen. 37 prior complaints against officers, Carter and Daniels. Naomi sat at her kitchen table, coffee steaming beside her, as the world she'd shaken began to move. For the first time in a long time, the system wasn't just reacting, it was reforming. And it wasn't just about her anymore. In the following weeks, a wave of momentum swept through the city. City Hall meetings, once sparsely attended, were now packed with residents demanding policy change. The young woman who had filmed the park incident. She became a local organizer, leading forums on racial profiling and police accountability. She'd started an initiative called Read in the Park, where hundreds of people, black and brown, gathered weekly, books in hand, as a peaceful protest and celebration of visibility. At the first event, Naomi showed up with a chair and a copy of Maya Angelou's "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings." The crowd parted as she sat down, silently, powerfully, and read. Meanwhile, the police department, under pressure from city officials and public outcry, announced the creation of a new de-escalation training division, overseen by an independent board with civilian representation. But not everyone was celebrating. There were protests from the police union, whispers about anti-cop sentiment, tension, division. Naomi knew the backlash would come, but she also knew this: every step forward comes with resistance. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived, not by email, not via lawyer, but hand-delivered. It was from Officer Carter, the man who had yanked her from the bench, slapped on the cuffs, and humiliated her in front of a crowd. The man whose silence had echoed louder than his orders. It was handwritten, brief, but real. "Ms. Carter, I've had weeks to think about what happened, what I did, what I didn't do, and I don't know if I deserve forgiveness, but I need to say this anyway. I was wrong. I saw what I expected to see, not what was really in front of me. And I realize now, I didn't just fail you. I failed my badge. I'm stepping away from the force. I need to figure out how to do better. I hope someday I'll earn the right to be part of the solution. Derek Carter. Naomi sat with the letter for a long time. She didn't cry, she didn't smile, she just breathed. Later that evening, she appeared on a local talk show, sitting opposite a former federal judge. The host asked, "Do you believe Carter's apology?" Naomi paused. "I believe in accountability," she said. "And I believe that if we're serious about change, we have to make space for people to grow, even the ones who hurt us." She looked directly into the camera. "But I also believe this. Change starts with action, not words. And this movement, this fight, isn't about just one apology. It's about protecting the next person before it happens again." Have you ever wondered what your legacy would be, not in terms of money or awards, but in the lives you've touched, the changes you've sparked, and the people who keep going because you dare to speak up? Hi, family. I hope you and your loved ones are safe, well, and holding on to hope. Because today, we close a story, but we open a future. Let's finish what Naomi Carter started. It had been almost a year since that afternoon in the park, since the handcuffs, since the trial, since the movement. Naomi Carter was no longer just a name in a lawsuit. She had become a symbol of resistance, resilience, and reason. Her story had been told in classrooms, featured in documentaries, and used in civil rights training around the country. But Naomi? She wasn't chasing the spotlight. She was back in her element, serving others. By day, she volunteered at a local legal aid center, helping marginalized folks navigate a system designed to overwhelm them. By night, she mentored young Black law students, reminding them that law is not just about rules, it's about justice. And once a month, she returned to the park. She always brought a book, and she always left the bench open for whoever needed it. One spring afternoon, a young girl approached her in that same park. She looked about 12, her backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes wide and unsure. "Are you Miss Carter?" she asked softly. Naomi looked up and smiled. "That's me." The girl hesitated, then handed her a folded piece of paper. "My school watched your story in class," she said, "and they asked us to write about someone who gives us hope." Naomi unfolded the note. It was handwritten, shaky and uneven. "You made me feel brave for being quiet. I used to think being quiet meant I wasn't strong, but you sat still, and you still changed the world." Naomi's eyes stung with tears. She reached for the girl's hand, and for the first time in a long time, she felt it deep in her chest, not anger, not grief, but healing, the reflection. "So let's talk about what really happened here. Was Officer Carter wrong? Absolutely. Did he abuse his authority? Without question. But did Naomi respond with vengeance? She responded with vision. That's the difference between power and purpose. Power protects itself. Purpose protects everyone. And in the end, Naomi showed us that justice isn't just about punishing those who fail. It's about lifting up everyone who's been failed. We don't need perfect systems. We need courageous people who hold those systems accountable. And if you've ever been dismissed, silenced, or humiliated for simply existing, let this story remind you. You don't have to shout to be powerful. You just have to stand. Now it's your turn. What part of Naomi's story moved you most? Drop a comment below. Let's make this a space of dialogue, not just a monologue. Have you ever witnessed or experienced injustice like this? Your story matters. Share it. And if you believe that justice belongs to everyone, not just the powerful, subscribe to Black Women right now. This channel exists to tell the stories they tried to bury, to uplift the voices they tried to silence, and to remind you Justice has a name. It's yours. Thank you for being part of this journey. We'll see you in the next one.